Welcome, everyone, to Cultivating Donors for Pick, Click, Give, and Beyond. I'm Laurie Wolf, the President and CEO of the Foraker Group. We are a partner to the Pick, Click, Give program. We're so happy that you could be with us today. Our goal in this class and all of the series of Pick, Click, Give trainings is to help us meet the goals of Pick, Click, Give, which is to build individual philanthropy in the state of Alaska by helping us all acquire new donors, retain the donors that we have, and increase the amounts of that donors are giving to nonprofits across the state of Alaska through the program. We're so excited that you're a part of the program, and we invite you to learn from this course and many of the other courses that we have available. In today's class in particular, we're going to focus on the steps to build sustainable relationships with our donor prospects and our current donors through Pick, Click, Give. And also we'll hone in and focus on what it means to be a good donor steward, and especially in the area of recognition. So let's dive in and explore what that all means. So we have a way of providing visuals to this conversation of what it means to build donor relationships, and this slide alone probably warrants a couple of hours, but we'll just quickly go over it here. This is about exploring what does it truly mean to position our organizations and ourselves as donor stewards to keep the donor in the focus and to do our work from a place that is donor-centered. So what this says is that our time for our whole organization, so we can see this in the macro, how does our organization spend its time? Or we can see it in the more personal, the micro, how do I spend my time as an executive director or a development professional or a board member? How do I want to spend my time? So you can look at it either way, but what it says is that we need to be spending roughly 30% of our time in these focusing on donors, doing our own homework, making sure that we're well prepared. We're doing our research, we're looking inward, we're crafting our message, also known as our case. We're identifying the population of people that we want to talk to, often known as donors or prospects, those who have not yet given but have things in common with our organization. And we're developing our own plans so that we're very strategically moving through this process. So we're going to spend about 30% of our time doing that work, and that's a critical step. We don't want to skip that step because the rest of it won't make a bunch of sense if we do that. Once we've got our plan and we know who we are and we know who we're going to be talking with, and we have a great plan to do that, then we can start to really move and shift our focus away from ourselves and onto our donors and our prospects in this. And so we're thinking about what we've framed here as relationship building, and which is really truly about communication, building trust, active listening, really not just pushing information out, but actually getting information back. So creating some mutually beneficial exchange in which we are positioning ourselves to really truly engage with our donors, whether they're Pick, Click, Give donors or any of the donors in our organizational life. Once we really feel like that relationship is in place and we truly understand and know the motivations and interests and connections to our donors and our potential donors, then it's time to ask them to make a financial investment. And in this case, it's through the Pick, Click, Give program. So there's lots of ways that our donors might be giving to us, and Pick, Click, Give is just often one of those ways. Sometimes we see in Pick, Click, Give that this is what we often call an and gift. It's the way that they give to us is through Pick, Click, Give, and they also give us investments through other mechanisms as well. We want to make sure that we're spending lots of time on that next piece. I often think that the recognition, reporting, and even inspiration and stewardship in this list actually takes us. It's the thing that makes the circle go round and round and round. It's the thing that we don't want to skip. So for some of our organizations, this is the 30% is the minimum that we should be spending. For many of us, we are lagging behind, and we really need to spend a lot more energy on that right now so that we can catch up and really help our donors feel recognized for the gifts that they're giving. So, but right now we call that 30% of our time. So while Pick, Click, Give is unique in that the season for giving lasts many months here, we definitely want to make sure that we're spending our time not just in the ask, but in all the other ways as well. So this course is going to focus on not the asking part, but on the other pieces that'll help us make that 10% really, really a powerful moment. So we're going to focus in on something often referred to as donor engagement. Mostly what this is that relationship building piece. How do we be purposeful and strategic in our communication? How do we make sure that as an organization, whether it's board, staff, or volunteers, or all of them, that we're really strategically moving our team towards engaging our donors and our potential donors in this program and beyond. In order to do that, one of the key takeaways of this course, or any course that you take in fundraising or fund development, is to really kind of take in that there is no such thing as one size fits all. If we try one letter, one way, one event, one mailer, one of anything, we're going to miss our audience. And so the more we can segment and focus in on the right donors at the right time with the right message, the more successful we're going to be. The more we can see people as individuals, and really understand their motivations and interests in participating in mission, the more successful we'll be. So for some organizations who have lots of internal structure, who have an awesome donor database, who have a willing board and a wonderful staff who are really ready to do this work and who are really positioned to be in a great listening space, we might be able to really focus in on a whole bunch of different audiences all at the same time. And for other organizations who have less of any one of those things, we might be able to only segment our donors into those who are giving and those who are not yet giving. But we definitely want to make any strides we can make to start to segment and really hone in so we can focus in that right message at the right time to the right audience. So ultimately, the result of doing that is actually not more work, it's just more focused work. So right away then, we have to know who we're talking to. So we could just split our list into two categories. New donors who have newly participated in the program, for example, or existing donors, those donors who have been participating in Pick, Click, Give with us for quite some time. Those of you who have been in the program obviously can move to the list on your right side of your screen, those existing donors, because you've been in the program enough to know, and you've got enough lists that are coming out of the program that you can see those overlaps. So you really want to spend some time. Those of you brand new to the program, this is your first time out, and this is an opportunity to set up those structures so you can make those comparisons in the future. So those are new donors. I mean, the first thing you want to do when you get your list is to ask, well, who do we know in that list? Are they recurring donors? Are they giving to us in this new way called Pick, Click, Give? Have we seen them at other places? Are they already our volunteers or our board members? Are they our staff? Are they people who used to give to us and are now just finding this new way to give again? So what do we know about these new donors? What's their connection to us? So we want to maybe get a small team together, really sit down, ask those questions. That team could be comprised of board, staff, volunteers. Just want to make sure it doesn't have to be a very big team. Just people who know other people can really recognize that list. And you want to create a very confidential setting because you're going to be able to talk about their connection back to the mission. For those of you that have the existing, can be doing some donor comparisons with existing donors. Again, you're going to use your donor database to have these conversations and your previous Pick, Click, Give lists. And again, you're asking that same question: who are they? What do they all have in common? And then you're going to look at how they're using Pick, Click, Give. Did Pick, Click, Give replace an existing gift, or did it add to it? And then we might ask some questions, and you can see those articulated on your screen. There's other questions, of course, that you can ask as well. This is just meant to kind of get the conversation started. So the idea here here is that the goal of this exercise is really just to really learn who is it that we're talking to, so that we can really focus in and be more specific as we're communicating back and reflecting back to our donors. There might be some overarching questions that the group might ask as well. If you don't do the smaller conversations, which again I'd encourage you to do in an overarching way as a team, you could ask these questions. How will we thank the people who are participating in this program? How will we connect to them in a more meaningful way? If donors are giving because they believe in mission, how are we going to make sure that we're making that connection? How will we keep them? So just because they've participated in Pick, Click, Give once doesn't mean that they'll keep us going, keep connecting with us through the program or in any other way. And really our goal in donor development is retention. So we want to figure out how we don't just get kind of in and out with our donors, but we want to have them stay with us. And the number one way to keep them is to make sure they feel recognized and make sure they feel that connection to mission, either physically or emotionally. We'll talk more about that in a moment. If you lost, who's not on the list? So did you lose some people from last year? So you might look at your list and say, oh gosh, I really, I don't see Bob on the list. I wonder why, I wonder what happened. And so you might kind of look in and see, well, maybe Bob started giving to your organization in a different way, or maybe you truly lost him. And so how do you want to manage that? What's the communication that you want to use? And again, that's not guilt or blame kind of on the spectrum. That's in that we miss you and we want to be connected and we hope you want to be connected to us kind of way. So making sure that we're crafting our good language around that so that we're, again, not every message for every group, but we're really focusing our messages on the right group. So matching our messages to each donor audience means that we want to be very strategic in our messaging. Sometimes we get so excited that we're going to send out a newsletter, or we're going to send out a piece of mail or a letter or an email communication or even a Facebook post. And we get so excited that we try to give them all the messages all at the same time. We ask them to pick, click, give, and we ask them to volunteer, and we ask them to bring a canned good, and we ask them to do all the things all at once. And the challenge with that, of course, is that people get overwhelmed pretty quickly. And if they're overwhelmed, then they walk away. And so we really want to be really clear. What is the message that we're asking? What is our call to action? And do we know who we're talking to so that we can craft that message well? And again, one of the things that we really want to make sure is that our donors are not our walking checkbooks. They're not our ATM machines. They're real live people who want to invest and connect to mission. So how does our messaging and our language really help them feel that emotional connection? Again, we want to be very clear about that call to action, and we want to make it incredibly easy for them to respond. Either it's with a click, or it's a phone call, or it's something that really helps them engage right away. If there's like 45 ways that that they have to spend to get back to us, they're often going to again opt out. One of the things that we spend some time talking about when we're not in the grant writing space is stories, not statistics, feelings, not facts. Not that we don't care, of course, about statistics and facts. Of course we do. But if we lead with those, we're going to lose our audience. Remember, people are driven by when their heart and their head are aligned. So we want to make sense, and we want this to feel like a really awesome investment. But we want to lead with stories. And there's so many amazing stories that come out of nonprofits every day about the work that's happening and the impact of those stories. We want to be able to share those stories. And even better, we know we're really connecting with those donors when they're telling their stories back, and we're having those conversations. So we really want to make sure that we're not overwhelming people by saying, oh, you should get, we'd love you to participate in Pick, Click, Give because we help 435 people and, on 365 days and, and at 7 a.m. we do this and at 8 a.m. we do this. So we don't want to overwhelm people too much with the data. And we really want to get back to the stories and the feelings behind that. That's really where people are going to be motivated from. We also want to be consistent in our communication. So Pick, Click, Give has its own branding, and it has its own. It will have a set of messages every year. We want to make sure that you're being consistent with those communications as well, and you're folding those in to the way that you're talking about the program. And if you're ever in doubt about that, there's a Pick, Click, Give website. It has lots of tools, lots of information. There's lots of these kinds of courses that you can take to hear more about that branding and those messages. But we want to definitely be consistent in our communication, so we're not giving the mixed message there. Of course, this is a short list. There's many other things that you could do, but we're just trying to get the ideas rolling in your head about how we can make sure that we're keeping our donor in the center of these conversations. So I mentioned the notion of stories, not statistics, feelings, not facts, and I just want to come back to that for a moment and talk about the donor and how it's not a one-size-fits-all. You might think about your own giving here and just think about how much information do you need when you're giving a $25 gift as opposed to a $1,000 gift or even your whole PFD. I need more information for the deeper my connection to you and the deeper and often the bigger my investment. So if you try to give me so much information for a $25 gift, I might get overwhelmed. Again, I might opt out. So if you think of this as the more the donor is connected, so the longevity of the donor, and or the bigger their investment, the more information and these other things that they need from you as an organization. So again, I don't need a bunch of information when I make that $25 investment. That's really a trust building exercise. Honestly, I'm trying to figure out what's going to, does that feel good? Does that $25 investment feel good? And do I get a sense of joy back from you that $25 really meant something and that you see that and you're appreciative of that. Again, really different than the information that I might need from you if I gave that $1,000 gift. So again, really thinking about, as we're going to craft our plans here, how we are providing that level of intensity in our communication that matches the level of intensity of the donor. So again, as we're starting to begin to think about our messaging here, we definitely want to think about, again, these are, we've already started with the kind of what do we know about the donor. We did that in the small group exercise we just talked about, but now we're going to start to also talk about what else do they need. How do they want to connect to mission? Who is the right messenger? It might be your paid job. You might be a development professional or the executive director, and you might go like, oh, well, I'm the right messenger because that's in my job description. I'm supposed to do that. But the reality is that we always want to ask that question from the donor's perspective. Who do they want to talk to? Do they want to hear from other Pick, Click, Give donors who are giving to you? And so it's a peer-to-peer conversation. Do they want to hear from fellow board members? Are you the right person if you're a staff member? Who is the right messenger from the donor's perspective? And again, what's the right way to deliver that message? We could make some generational assumptions, but I often, I think those often don't apply in these kinds of conversations. So we want to make sure really that, again, if we know these folks, that we know how their preferred method of communication. You also, of course, want to balance that with your own organization's ability to have some good follow through. I'd rather you have really one amazing way to communicate that has good follow through than kind of 20 haphazard ways that don't deliver a consistent message. So if email is your strategy, just know you might not be able to communicate with everyone. And equally, if you're using social media, just know that, there's also lots of people that you're not going to communicate with. So again, delivering the message in a way that the donor can really hear you and that that they're receiving your message. One of the ways that we're going to focus on retention of our donors is to help them feel connected to mission. This isn't always physically possible. And so we also want to talk about how donors can be connected to us from an emotional space as well. So again, one of the best ways to connect people at the emotional level is through storytelling. And so making sure that we're telling really amazing stories, not too long, really, really clear, really purposeful, and we're inviting others to share their stories back with us. Again, this might be a wonderful place to use your social media tools, your website. It can even be in print. Again, just highlighting those stories might be a little shorter, but using those stories. Again, not every donor for every opportunity, so be strategic in your use. We don't want to overwhelm you or the donor or potential donor in this program. Some signs that you, of course, that they are involved, that they're feeling that sense of involvement and engagement. Again, in that relationship space, that 30% of our space. Well, of course, the number one way we know we have signs of involvement is that we know who they are. We can say, "Oh, I know that's Laurie, and she's really invested in our organization's mission, and these are the ways that she really likes to come to the table and have these conversations," and et cetera, et cetera. So you know them, and you can actually articulate some things about them. But again, maybe you don't know them, so you're doing great active listening. Maybe they actually sound a little bit like you. They can express the organization's core values, maybe not in exactly the same words, but in the energy or the essence of those ideas. But they're also providing you some feedback. They're coming back to you and saying things like, I have some questions about your program, or I have some suggestions, or I want to just give you some feedback. Often those folks, they're not just the grumpy folks, they're the happy folks as well. And we really want to hear more from them. Often we have to create ways for them to give us that feedback. So often our organizations can look a little bit isolated, and we're not really open to that, but we want to create avenues to really elicit that kind of feedback from people. So some ways that we might do that, this is a big brainstorm list. There's probably, there's tons of ideas on here, not every idea for every group for sure. And we just you want to make sure you're picking the right ways to engage donors. And again, that works for your organizational capacity, that works for your board and your staff and the ability to really have good follow through. Again, I'd rather you pick one or two of these than do them all. And again, not everyone for every group. Just if you think about these again, not every one of you can offer all of these, again, because of the way that your organization does its mission, because of confidentiality rules, all of those things are in play. So again, just this big brainstorm list, my challenge back to you is to do your own brainstorm list and find the ways that are right for you, make that list, and then maybe even put this list away, start with a blank piece of paper, do that list for yourself, and then maybe pull this piece of paper out and compare it and see if it sparks new ideas or additional ideas about the way that you would do that work. It's, of course, at any point, if you have questions about any of these things, you can always reach back to those of us leading these programs at Foraker or at Pick, Click, Give. We're happy to explain any of these things on this list if you've got questions moving ahead. One of the interesting things that we know in the relationship building phase is that our volunteers are much more likely to become our donors. And so you can already see in this list how you could engage volunteers even more, how you might engage past donors into these new experiences, how you might highlight one of the fun things. The other fun things that can happen all across Alaska in the Pick, Click, Give program is some fun shout outs around Pick, Click, Give. So, standing with doing some sign waving, doing some other really kind of fun kickoff parties. There's been some really fun expressions of community spirit around Pick, Click, Give. And so don't forget to add those to your list as well. And every year those, your community will organize those things, or you can help organize those things for your community. And again, you can reach back out to the Pick, Click, Give folks to help you do some more brainstorming about that as well. So as we start to kind of put these pieces together, here's just an example of how we might run a new Pick, Click, Give donor through this kind of conversation using the relationship building model. We're going to shift our gears after we look at this into fully looking more at the recognition stage. So again, I just want to give a sense for everyone about how you could start to put all these pieces in place of the things that we've talked about so far. So we've given already in this brief time just some examples of some things that we could do in the research phase to help us craft our plan. I've given some examples already around the relationship and how we're going to start to position ourselves. And then, of course, the ask is that we're getting ready for that ask as early as November or December so that we can be ready for the January 1 moment. And we're running that all the way through the whole season of Pick, Click, Give. We'll turn our attention now then to the recognition, reporting, and stewardship phase, that last phase. and explore that even more here. So I like to think of this phase also as the inspiration phase of our work. And again, our things that we can do to just make this all work well for our donors is, of course, to provide that follow through. Again, rather you do one or two really amazing things than try to do a lot of things not as well. And really the goal is not just to communicate with people when they're giving a gift, when you're making the ask, but to be communicating with them all year long in a variety of ways. And again, being very specific with those messages. And because ultimately, again, our goal is not to help people feel like that ATM machine, that checkoff box, that checkbook. So making sure that we're communicating with people far beyond the time that we're just asking them for money. And ultimately what that means is that we're committing our organization to great donor service, that we're putting in the right resources that we need. Again, for some of you, that may be like the database and the planning tools, but it could also be around training with your board and your staff or your volunteers. Maybe you're finally taking that leap and investing in some nice note cards or some wonderful photographs, or you're helping focus on crafting some really powerful stories into some graphics that you want to share with people. So any number of resources that you could be investing in this work, and really the time is now to do that. And that, of course, understanding that it's no one single person's job or department's job to be focusing on doing good donor service, that's an organizational wide culture that we want to create so that everybody has a role to play, from the way that we answer the phone to the way that we greet people to the way that we might sign our name on a thank you card, to just really understanding that everybody has a role to play. It's not a single person's job. So how do you engage your whole team in doing this thing called donor stewardship and really creating that very healthy and positive culture of philanthropy in your organization? When we start to, the last thing that we're going to do in this class is just focus in on creating that donor recognition plan. So for some of us, writing a whole fundraising plan is just too overwhelming right now. It's not something we're going to achieve this year. But within a whole philanthropy plan, donor development plan, there's a piece of it that's around the donor recognition. And you can actually put in a donor recognition plan right inlaid into your overall plan. We're going to pull it out for the sake of this conversation. In many organizations, this is where they start. They write this piece of the plan first, and then they build the rest of the plan around it. For many organizations, if we were more planful, more specific, more on purpose with our donor recognition, I can almost guarantee you'll raise more money this year. Because most of our organizations are so haphazard in this work that we forget to do it, or we think that someone else is doing it, or it just doesn't express the kind of appreciation that we're truly feeling for our donors. So this donor recognition plan is really where we're going to spend the last bit of our time here today. And again, just to start thinking about how we might do that in our own organizations. So some recognition guidelines, if you will, that again, a recognition plan is about reconnecting or connecting to our donors back to mission and the impact of their gift. Remember that donors aren't giving to you, they're giving through you. And that gift goes through your organization right into mission, right into your community as a way that mission can be accomplished. So we have to say, right, money is not a destination. The goal is to weave it back to the difference it's making in the mission. I have to say that the organizations that want to raise more money aren't very good at it because the focus is on money. The organizations that understand that they want to build relationships in which money is a part of that, they are often far more successful. So again, we want to make sure that our focus is in the right place and that it's not just all about the money. And so then again, reminding ourselves that a gift is really going through us into the community, not to us. The other thing that we often say is, right, that people give you because you meet needs, not because you have them. So this isn't about you. It's about the donor and how they want to connect through mission into community, and really being able to see ourselves as a connector, a conduit, or a vessel to make sure that that's happening. And again, one of the best ways that we can do that is to tell that compelling story with our donors, not at them or for them, but really with them, and really engaging and connecting with them in that storytelling. As we start to create that donor recognition system, our goal is to say thanks as fast as we can. And I say as fast as we can because, of course, in Pick, Click, Give, there is a delay between the time that the donor makes the gift and the time that we will get that official list of them. But there's been some new mechanisms over time to help us reconnect. And of course, you can help by engaging in donors and talking with them, at least the ones you know, you can start to understand their giving. Even in unofficial ways. So again, as soon as you can, you want to say thanks immediately and as often as you can. And there's a whole, of course, lots of tools in your toolbox to do that: phone, technology, mail, etc. And again, we want to create that culture of philanthropy. And so we're asking people to lots of different groups, to board, volunteer, other donors, etc., to say thanks with you. Again, best practice out there in the world of fund development says we should thank 7 times for any gift that we get in a year. For some of you, you're already kind of rolling your eyes in the back of your head and saying 7 times, I can't even do it once. Once is great. We'd settle for once. Once is a wonderful start. And if you could get it to be twice, that would be great. And remember that only one of those times is the formal thank you letter. The letter in which, it looks like the formal letterhead. The rest of it is around engagement, is around that relationship building piece, and also the lists of donors that we put out, whether we put them out as special giving lists and recognition lists for Pick, Click, Give, or we list everybody in our annual thank you, often or we list them on our website, or however we're doing all of those wonderful donor lists. So lots of ways that acknowledgement can happen. It could even happen in the bread aisle at the grocery store, where we're running into people and just thanking them from our heart for doing this wonderful thing, and really doing it with you, because I'm sure that you also are participating. Again, this first acknowledgement is within 24 to 48 hours of the gift. Well, that again in Pick, Click, Give cannot be the reality, but what can be the reality is that you're thanking them within 24 to 48 hours of receiving your list. So as soon as you're getting your list, you've done all your preparation, you're all ready for that list, and you're all ready to say thank you. So you're not letting that lag behind. If you could get it within a week or 2 weeks of getting the list, that's great too. So again, just remember there's best practice, and then there's often the reality of our lives. But again, what this is just saying is that we need to be prepared and be purposeful because this is a real step in the process. When we're crafting our donor recognition system, one of the things that we want to think about is, again, this is mutually beneficial. So what's right for the donor? What's the benefit to them? And how do we want to match our acknowledgement to those donors? Often what we see is that the longer the engaged donor, or the bigger the gift, the more that donor wants 3 things. Notice that none of these things requires a lot of money. And very little of it requires stuff, tote bags and mugs and all that stuff. But what it really is all about is creating more opportunity to connect deeper with mission. So creating privileges that other people don't get, or having them get it first, or creating opportunities that other people don't get or get first. And then, of course, access to information or to people that people don't get, or that they get first. And what that often can look like in the most simple terms is who signs the thank you letter. So making sure that our board members are engaged in saying thank you, not just our staff. Maybe there's an opportunity for a little recognition party. Maybe there's an opportunity for some special ways to engage our Pick, Click, Give donors. So just be thinking about those things from the point of view of mission. And again, our ultimate goal of how do we connect our donors deeper to the mission. One of the things that we also do in our recognition is create some levels of giving. And one of the things that we often talk about is that the names of the giving levels that we create should be hierarchical but not insulting. We should feel wonderful to be at the beginning of that levels, and it should be amazing to be at the top. And so how we name our giving levels is really about making sure that people feel that connection, again, back to mission, that those names feel very meaningful and motivational. If I come in at that entry level of giving, I should feel motivated and excited to go to that next level. And that has a lot to do with how we name it and how we frame it. It also has a lot to do with who else is in those lists. Like if I see my neighbor in the list above me, I might be motivated that way. So we want to make sure that we're managing that. Not too many levels, make sure it's really an affordable and a manageable process. And by all means, this should be fun. I often think this is one of the most fun conversations to facilitate in my role, working with organizations to do these naming levels. Lots of creativity, lots of fun, and really putting yourself in that place of, I'm a donor, what would I think would be exciting and fun about that? And so again, this should feel celebratory at every level. So asking yourself, what is meaningful, and maybe even doing some focus groups to help you think about what these right things are. So you're not just creating these in the vacuum. And certainly don't create these all by yourself. This is not something you just want to do at your desk and call it good. You really want to engage lots of the team in this conversation. And if you could even reach beyond your team out there into the world of potential and current donors to get their feedback even better. So here's some just overview, quick 7 steps around, which is probably not very quick at all, around writing your donor recognition plan. Again, this should feel familiar to you now, as we've been talking through knowing your audience, articulating those giving levels, then determining those opportunities for people to connect. Notice I say existing opportunities. It's not like we need you to create brand new ways for donors to connect. We want you to weave those connections to the things that are already happening in your organization. Really start from a place of your strengths. To go with what you're good at. Determine who's else is going to participate. Again, this is not one single person's job. This is a team effort. Again, know your story and those key messages so that you can tell your own story and invite other people to tell theirs. You've got to write this plan down. It's not a plan if you don't write it down. Can't be a team sport if we all can't play it by the same set of rules. We want to have this be a written down plan. And again, we want a whole team approach. So we want to celebrate it inside and then celebrate it outside. Give yourself some space to get it wrong, to test it inside before we go out and do this big rollout outside where it's hard to get it back. So here's just as we round out our time here, this is just an example of what that plan might look like if we wrote it down. And so this is an example of an individual donor recognition plan. Of course, we'd write down a different plan if we were talking about our corporate donors. But again, this is about Pick, Click, Give, so we're going to focus on people here. And so often the opening of our plan is just some rules for the road. It just gives us a special, those kind of overarching rules about how we're going to approach this work. And again, your list might look different. This is just one example of how it might look. Mostly what I want you to see is that a whole plan can fit on 2 PowerPoint slides. Like, we're not asking you to write a book. We're not encouraging you to go, to take, there'll be lots of prep time, lots of conversation, lots of listening, lots of teamwork here. But when all is said and done, this is a plan that's easily accessible, that you can reference readily, that doesn't have to get filed in some manual that you'll never see again, but that you can just put right in front of your computer, right in front of your phone, carry with you where you go, so that you can start to live it. So first part is just some overarching goals or rules that you're going to have in recognition. Notice we've given you some ideas of some things, but of course you can create your own list as well. And again, we're encouraging you to create special acknowledgement for your Pick, Click, Give donors, even above and beyond this list. And then you might create the plan itself. Notice the levels are about the amount of money, then we've given them a name, and then we've said how could they connect. And again, this is just a very short example. It's not perfect. It's just to get the juices flowing, to help you kind of think about it. Again, that naming levels, hierarchical but not insulting. Feels great to be a partner, feels awesome to be a mentor, and off we go from there, right? There's those recognition ideas is really just, again, about matching the right person to the right audience, giving them those opportunities, those privileges, those experiences that other people might not get or first, and mission connect, right? And again, don't list anything here you can't have follow through around. Maybe some of you are only going to have 3 giving levels instead of instead of 6. There's no magic number there, except don't create too many, because you have to manage them all. Again, don't make promises we can't keep. So keeping it simple is a better strategy, if that's what you can do. So as we round out our time together, just to offer you just the last kind of 6 tips to sum up our time together. So of course, make this easy for the donor and for you. Make it meaningful. Connect it back to mission and to the donor. Make it time limited. You don't want to be doing this 24/7. You want to say, like, here's the season of which we're gonna ramp up our recognition. We're gonna do this work. Here's the season in which we're gonna ask. So really mapping it out on that calendar. Know your next step. Your money is never the destination. People clicking and giving is not the end of it. It's just the beginning. So know always what your next step will be. And please, please, please write it down. We want to make sure that we can have this be a team effort. And if it's not written down, it's very hard to engage the team. And most importantly, have fun. I always believe that the first 3 words of fundraising is fun. And so make it fun. And by making it fun, it will be meaningful to you and to the people that you're talking to. And with that, we want to wish you well and thank you so much for participating in the Pick, Click, Give program. If we can help you in any way, there's all of our information, both for Pick, Click, Give and for Foraker. We're happy to help you along the way, and we look forward to talking with you again.